Our new research shows and predicts that 6.8 million birds per year are being killed at communication towers. And that's a number that's 27 times larger than the number of birds that were killed in the Exxon Valdez spill. So these large communication towers are used for television and radio broadcast. The risk of these towers to the birds goes up with their height. So the taller the tower, the greater the probability that it gets up into the elevation, the altitude where birds are migrating. The heights here are really kind of hard to comprehend if you're not standing next to them. We're talking about things that are going almost half a mile into the sky. So these are predominantly insectivores, small birds that will eat insects. They keep our forests healthy. They're often quite beautiful, blues and yellows and reds and whatnot, and they'll fit in your hand. We used to have an appreciation of birds because of the services that they provide for us. They are keeping insect populations in check. They're also quite beautiful, and people watch birds. And then there's simply the matter of it being essentially a waste to kill a bunch of birds in a very unnatural way, and that they don't get to fulfill their normal ecological functions in the world. So if you can imagine a bird's disoriented and it starts flying around that tower, even on a short tower like this, there's a lot of wires to run into. But in a taller tower, there's exponentially more. Most of the birds that die flying around these towers after they're attracted to lights die in collision with the guy wires, which aren't really wires, they're big cables that help hold the tower up. The towers also tend to have solid lights and red flashing lights, and those towers are in fact the biggest problem, because in the presence of those solid red lights, the birds are unable to sort of get out of their spell, as it were. They circle the tower and then they run into these big cables that are being used to hold the tower up. I've been working on this topic since 2005. This is a study that's built on hundreds of other researchers who have gone out and collected and counted carcasses under towers starting back right around 1949, 1950. Our study took and brought together a series of longer-term records at individual towers, and we ended up with 38 of them, so that we were able to then take those 38 towers and create a relationship between how tall the tower is and how many birds it kills per year. This is a topic that has some degree of political sensitivity. There is a regulatory process that's going on for the FCC to look at whether it needs to regulate the way in which it permits towers. So there's a number of ways in which we could address this problem and reduce bird mortality. Probably the most effective one would be to change the lighting scheme on these towers. Our estimate is that if we took the tallest 5–6% of towers and converted them from having solid lights to having flashing lights, we could reduce the overall mortality by 45%, which would represent somewhere between 2 to 3 million birds per year. Another solution to the mortality issue is to encourage companies to use the same towers, even competitors, instead of every company building its own tower, to reduce demand on additional towers. If you design towers that can be self-supporting without guy wires, it should dramatically reduce the bird mortality at those towers. One of the things this country has been great about is saying that we care about not losing species on our watch. We should care about the birds killed at communication towers because it's simply senseless. It doesn't have to be.